Hi everyone, welcome to Friday Fun. Today we're going to continue with our topic about things underground. And last time we talked about some animals that were a bit bigger that dug tunnels and burrows and had rooms and things like that. This time we're going to talk about earthworms. And earthworms are quite a bit smaller than gophers and voles and mice, but they also live underground and they also make tunnels. And let's talk about an earthworm. So an earthworm, you know what they look like. They're kind of long and squirmy, and that's basically the shape of an earthworm, don't you think? Now, earthworms are made of segments. So if you look very carefully, there's little tiny lines that go through. And each little segment is like a circle of muscle. And we call it a segment because segments are things that are attached, different parts that are attached. So they're attached on the inside and then they're all covered with skin. And then there's one segment that's even bigger and it's sort of near the head. And when it's an adult, they have this bigger segment, and this one's called the clitellum. And the thing that's really important about the bigger segment is that's how they make their egg cocoons. That's how they make their babies. Oh, let me tell you something really interesting about a worm. Earthworms are both a boy and a girl at the same time. Every earthworm can make eggs, and every earthworm can make sperm. It takes two earthworms together to fertilize the eggs, but they both make eggs. And let me show you what they do. So let's pretend that my arm, and it's gray, is an earthworm. And let's say that my head, which isn't gray, my head is over here. And this is my clitellum, this part of my shirt that's all smooth here. So what happens is they make a mucus or a slimy substance like this. And then what they do, this is going to be their cocoon. And then they wriggle out of the cocoon all the way down their body, not to the head. They go the other way, actually. So here's the cocoon, and it slides all the way down their body to the end. And then right as it gets to the end, the worm lays the eggs inside and it gets sealed like a little pouch. Now, it's not this big. It's very tiny, just like a little tiny seed, because we know the worms aren't that big. But then this is just left in the soil, and then the new baby worms will hatch. And they're really, really small, but they look just like an adult worm, but so, so, so small. Let me show you my model of a worm. So here we have all the different segments. So let's pretend this is like a worm that doesn't have the skin on. And if we look here, we can see that one end is pointy, and then if we put the rest of it together, we can make the other end. And when you're looking at a worm, it's not easy to tell the head from the tail just by looking. But when you watch it moving, then you can for sure tell. Okay, this one is a little bit loose because it got a little bit broken, so I'm going to make it a little tighter. Now, the difference between the head and the tail really isn't that much, except for the head is where the food goes in and the tail is where the poop comes out. And closer to the head is the bigger one, the clitellum that makes the cocoons. So you can see the segments. It makes it really flexible. And the tube in the middle, we're going to say that's where all the digestion happens. So in through the mouth, they eat the dead leaves and they come up to the surface and they drag things back down into their tunnels. And they also eat some soil with some rocks. And the little bits of tiny stone and sand are what help break it up. It doesn't have any teeth to chew with, so it breaks it up inside and it goes all the way through. It absorbs all the nutrients or all the stuff that helps it live and grow, and then poops out the other side. And the poops are called castings. And when we go out in the preserve, I'm going to show you some castings. They're easy to find. So here we have our worm. And we have our head, And we know that the head is on this end because it's closest to the clitellum. And also when we see it move, it'll move forward. It can move backwards, but it prefers to move forward. And you'll notice our head has no eye. Nope, there's no eye on a worm at all. They can't see, but they can sense light. So if they're out in the sun, they're going to want to retreat back into the ground. So here's the segments. Here's the worm. Here's the tail. And there's one other thing I want to tell you that's really cool. So how does it move? It keeps a little bit of slime or a mucus layer all over its body, and that helps it slip through the tunnels. And on each little segment, all the way around it, are tiny little bristles. Every single one has these little bristles, and they're so small you can't see them with your eye. But if you have a super strong microscope, let me show you what the bristles look like. They're called setae, and the bristles are how it moves. It grabs the little bits of ground around it, and that's how it moves. An even stronger microscope, you could see that little bristle sticking up. That's called the setae. So when we have our worm, and if we put our worm onto some dry paper, if we listened really carefully, we might even hear a little scratching noise of those bristles grabbing. So that's our earthworm. Now I want to show you some real ones. So I went out in my garden yesterday, or actually this morning, and it was too windy yesterday. That was the original plan. And I got myself some worms. And here we have one. Maybe this will be a better light. And he's moist, and he feels a little slippery, and he's kind of wiggly. And he's moving around. Let's put him here and see how he moves. Let's see if he heads out looking for stuff, and let's watch him. See how the head moves first, and it turns into a point. So what happens are the bristles in the back hold on tight, and then the head stretches out, and then the bristles in the back let go, and the rest of it can catch up. And he's going to try to climb out of there, and I'm not sure. Maybe he can. Let's see. Maybe if I turn it this way, we can see him trying to climb out. Okay, so there he is. He's trying to climb out. There he goes, head first, and then the rest catches up. The head stretches, and the rest catch up. Let's grab a couple more and see what happens with those worms. These guys are a little dirty. Of course, they live in the dirt. They're going to look a little dirty. I put a number of them in here. They're all hiding because they don't want to be out in the sun. Let's put a couple in here. Now let's get some of the dirt off. I'm going to spray them with a little bit of water in the spray bottle. We're going to give them a little bath and try to clean them up a little bit so we can get a chance to see them. We don't want them too wet because they can actually drown if they don't have any air. They need the air. That guy doesn't want to cooperate. This guy, he's super active. He's still trying to get out. The other two, they don't look very active right now. Maybe this guy will be more active. Let's spray him, see what it does. They've been quite cold, and when they're cold, like it's been really cold outside, they just kind of go to rest. So trying to warm them up, this guy got really warm. He's starting to warm up a little bit. There he goes. These are all younger worms. I couldn't find a really fully grown adult worm today. Just didn't get lucky enough to find the big guy. But they're in there. But these are all younger worms. And I read that it takes about a whole year for a worm from a tiny little baby to becoming the full-grown adult. Now they have no bones inside. They just have rings of muscles that are the segments, and they have a big tube for their digestion, for their food to go through, and then they have the long vein for their blood to go through. Everybody's starting to wake up a little bit more now. We're getting some action here. You can see those heads are searching for something. They're looking for anywhere to hide. They don't want to be out in the light. They want to be under the dark soil or hiding somewhere where they're not going to get the sun. If they get direct sun for more than just a short period, that will kill them. Or if their bodies completely dry up, that will also kill them. Uh-oh, this guy's making an escape. He's already off to the side. I'm going to have to put him back in. Sorry, I know you're trying so hard. Because if that worm gets on this carpet, it would be difficult because it matches the same color. It would have good camouflage. So those are our earthworms, and those are fun, and they came right out of my garden. Now we're going to look at them under the microscope. So I'm going to have Miss Susan come over to the microscope, and I'm going to put one inside of a petri dish. We're going to put him under the microscope and have a look. I have to turn it on. Oops, I want the other light. I don't want the bottom light. So I have the top light on. I'm going to put him under the microscope, and we're going to take a look. So she's going to bring the camera right up to the eyepiece, just like we would do if we were looking in there. So we're looking at our worm. Slide him a little. There you go. We can see the red veins coming through, and he's moving. And then the dark line underneath, that's his digestion. That's where all the food and soil is going through his body. It's collecting the nutrients. And you can see how those segments are moving. Oops, he get right out of the picture. Let's move our dish underneath and see if we can get him in there. That's his tail end. Let's circle all the way around and see if we can see the front. Okay, there's a little bit of water in the petri dish that he's in. Now, we don't want too much because we don't want to drown him. Oh, he's going to turn around and try to find a way out. He doesn't really want to settle down because right now he's in the bright light of the microscope, just like the sun. Now, of course, it doesn't have any eyes, but they can still sense the light, and there he's looking for any kind of tunnel to escape. Look, you can really see those veins. And did you know that he's got 5 hearts? They're super tiny, but they help pump the blood through the body. So this is our worm under the microscope. So I wanted to show you how they're so smart and they're sensitive to the light. So we walked over by the window where the sun is coming in, and I'm going to put a big pile of dirt and leaves over on the side so they can have a place to hide. And let's see how long it takes them to find it. So here's my pile of dirt, and I have 3 worms on the edges. Oh, I'm making a mess. So I'm going to put it here in the light, and we're going to watch them and see if they can find that dirt. They're looking for a dark place to hide. They're heading toward the edges. Oh, that guy's in the sun. He's really moving quickly. See him stretching out, going, oh no, where am I going to go? I shouldn't be in the sun. And the other 3 are over in the shade at least. That's a better place. You're not going the right place, my friend. You need to go this way. If you look over here, the pile of dirt will rescue you. And he doesn't want to go there. That's so funny. Turn around. See, they don't have eyes, so maybe he can't tell. Oh, now he's going in a better direction. Now this guy's going up over the top, and that's not a good plan at all because he's really in the sun. But he's going to try anyway. Oh, I thought they'd do better in going toward the dirt. Now, if I put them on top of the dirt, I know they'll go down immediately. Let's try that. Let's lay him right on the top and see if he burrows himself in very quickly. He's going down. He's going down. He's going to find himself a nice, safe, moist place to hide from that bright light. Trying to dig himself in there. Oh, it's taken longer than I thought. There he goes. So now we've seen our worms moving, and now I'm going to read the story. The story's about a little boy who is visiting his grandmother. And he says, this book is called Yucky Worms. Here he is. He's just arriving at his grandma's house. One day, when I was in Grandma's garden, Grandma dug up a slimy, slithery, wiggly worm. Yuck, I said. Throw it away. Throw it away? Grandma looked horrified. Would you throw away one of your friends? You can't be friends with a worm, I said. You can't even tell which end is which. Yes, you can. Watch. Grandma put the worm down. It gave kind of a squirmy wiggle and disappeared really fast at the pointy end first. As the rounded end vanished, Grandma said, there goes the tail. I bent down to look, and I could see it had left a little tunnel. Where'd it go? I asked. Home, Grandma said. It's an earthworm. It lives underground. And here on our picture, we can see that there's the clitellum, the bigger segment, and then all the little segments. If they peel the skin away in the drawing, all the little hearts are right up here near the front, closer to the mouth. And then the digestive tube goes all the way, and the blood vessel goes all the way. So that's the brain. Does not have an eye. No eyes on earthworms. But what does it eat? Dirt? I wanted to know. It eats tiny, tiny stones and bits of dirt, Grandma told me. But worms eat other things too, like rotting leaves and flowers and fruit and dead insects. They especially like eating at night when it's cool. The stones and dirt help grind everything up in the worm's stomach. And then the worm poops it out the back end. Grandma pointed at the flower bed. Look, can you see? I bent down and I saw what looked like a weird, long, curly worm made of dirt. That's worm poop, Grandma said. It's called cast. You know when you recycle things? Well, worms do it too. And there's a lot of goodness left in the things that worms eat. And when the goodness comes out again as poop, it helps the plants grow big and strong. As the worms move around under and on top of the soil, the poop gets spread around the garden. We're going to go out into the preserve and we're going to show you some of the little piles of worm castings out in the preserve. That's why worms are my friend, Grandma gave me a big thumbs up. And it's not just their poop that's good for plants. The tunnels they dig loosen the soil so the roots can stretch out and the air and the rainwater can get in. Look at all these tunnels under the ground. And some of these are little stones, but maybe something that big could be the size of a cocoon, something really small. But it's dangerous being a worm, Grandma said. I stared at her. Dangerous? I asked. She smiled at me. Lots and lots of animals think worms make a delicious dinner. Remember we talked about the mole last time? Birds love them, and so do moles, badgers, frogs, hedgehogs, foxes, and even some slugs eat worms. Human beings accidentally slice through them with their shovels and spike them with their forks. It's a tough life. Cutting them in half doesn't hurt them, Grandma, I said. They just turn into two worms and keep growing. Grandma shook her head. Poor worms. Lots of people think that, but that's not true. And she put her fork down. Time for a snack. Grandma had tea and I had orange juice. Can I dig up a worm? I asked. If it rains, Grandma says, the worms will come up on their own. I took a cookie. What if it doesn't rain? Grandma winked at me. We'll use the watering can and pretend. I finished my cookie as fast as I could. Can we trick the worms now? Grandma filled the watering can and I watered the ground. Then I stood back. I didn't want the worms chewing on my shoes. They only put their heads out, Grandma promised, and it'll be a while before they do. Grandma was right. I had time to eat 2 more cookies before she said, "Look!" "Wow," I said. I could just see the tip of the worm above the ground. "Now watch this, Grandma," said. Grandma stamped her foot, and the worm disappeared. "Did you see?" I asked Grandma. Grandma shook her head. "Worms don't have eyes." Oh, I'm sorry. "Did they see you?" I asked Grandma, and she shook her head. "Worms don't have eyes. They feel vibrations, though, and the thump like that might mean that there's a hungry bird landing nearby and some danger." Stamping her foot. Grandma dug her fork into the ground and came up. Up came lots of dirt and wriggly worms. She picked one up and washed it in the watering can. "Mustn't drop it," she said. "They can't swim." Grandma put the clean worm on some paper and held it near my ear. I could hear a tiny rustling noise. "What's that?" "They're covered in little bristles," Grandma said. "The bristles and their muscles help them move." So here are the little magnifying glasses trying to show you the setae, little bristles that help them move. "I've got muscles too," and I bent my arm so Grandma could see. "If you've got so many muscles," she said, "maybe you'd like to help me plant my sunflower seedlings." "Okay," I agreed, and then I thought of something. "When I go to school on Monday, I'm going to say that I've got lots of new friends." "Good idea," said Grandma. "But," I said, "I might not actually tell them they're worms." Well, we've walked out into the preserve and we've made mostly almost the whole circle by Target, around the corner, and the big bridge. And while we were walking, we picked up a lot of trash. It was so windy yesterday because you have to remember today is the day after the wind and I'm going to be seeing you on Friday. So it's a few days before our class. So windy, there was so much trash everywhere. We've been picking it up. But we've come around the pathway and we're almost to the fence where the sump is. So if you see over there, there's the sump is down behind the fence. So we found this is a nice spot to look at the worm castings. This is the worm poop that's above the ground that shows us that the worms have been here. So we're going to look down on the trail here on the pathway and see the little piles of dirt. And I'm going to circle them for you so you can find them. So we're going to look down. There are many. There's some right here. There's about 4 in that circle. Here's one big one. Here's some more. There are so many piles of worm castings, and they look just a little bit different than the other soil around them. Does it look kind of like little balls? See how they're sort of like little balls? Those are the worm castings or the worm poop. Here's some more. It's some more worm castings, and we have it on a zoom lens now, so you can really see very, very close. See how big my finger looks? But look at all those little worm poops. They're like little balls. So if we're going to back away a little bit, there's more. I don't know how much we can back away with the zoom, but I see there's some other little piles. Can you find them? So as we were walking down along the fence, we saw the great blue heron. And this guy, he's been coming to the marsh for a couple of years now. And he feels so comfortable around people. He just struts his stuff. He's not afraid. And he's just looking through the grass and trying to find maybe a lizard, probably a lizard, maybe a frog. So I wanted to show you what we saw while we were walking picking up trash on the around the marsh. Wow, look what happened from the wind. You might remember this tree because we talked about this tree when we did our lesson on decomposers. And I told you the tree was dead and how certain things were boring into it and fungus was eating it and also some lichen. And some of the lichen bark had just got blown right off, just blown right off the tree. And when a tree is dead and it starts to decompose, it becomes weaker. It's not strong against the wind, and it just broke in half. So we walked over to the propagation area because I remember when looking under pots sometimes when we're trying to look for other animals, I've seen some earthworms. So I've got these buckets over here, so let's check under these buckets and see what we can find. Look under this one. Now when I look underneath, I see a great big root, see some ants. Don't see a lot of activity that reminds me of worms. I do see some baby roly-polies. I don't really see some worm activity. Let's try the next one. This one might be more promising. Looks really, really wet and not a lot of ants. Let me see if I can dig anything out of here. Oh my goodness, it's pretty hard soil. Look what I found. That's a big one and a little one. Earthworms in the ground. Look at him move. We know which side is the head because the head is the side that's trying to find where he's going to go. There goes the head. So that's finishing up our class today about worms. Hope you can find some earthworms near your home, or maybe you'll have a chance to come down to the preserve. Hope you can make it. Thanks for coming to Friday Fun. Bye.